Well, hello, everyone. This is John Byrne with Poets and Quants. Welcome to our backstage event. We're talking STEM. That would be STEM designated degrees and tracks in business graduate programs. And we have with us today four terrific schools and four great representatives from those schools. Let's start with Diana Economy. What an interesting name, Diana. I never asked you how your last name became to be Economy, and then you end up working in a business school.
You know what? My family's Greek, so it was Economou originally, but I got my MBA from Michigan Ross, and I was definitely the first person called on in economics class.
I bet. And Diana is the full-time MBA director of admissions at Michigan Ross. Welcome. And then we have Doug Miller, who's Associate Dean for MBA programs at Rutgers Business School in New Jersey. Is that both New Brunswick and Newark?
It is. So our full-time MBA program is housed in Newark. Our part-time programs on both campuses.
Right, exactly. Welcome. And then we have Kim Magoya, Director of Graduate Admissions at Miami. Hi, Kim.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Our pleasure. And then we have Steve Schnedt, Director of Admissions from Case Western Reserve's Weatherhead School of Management. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you. Hello, everyone from beautiful Cleveland, Ohio.
Absolutely. Home of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, among other great attractions in Cleveland.
Right.
So let's start with the basics. Let's go through how long you've had a STEM designated program and what nature it takes. You know, there's some schools that have their entire MBA program, every single concentration, and it's all STEM. Some have specific tracks that you would pursue. Others might have a set menu of courses that sort of electives that you would add into the MBA program to make it STEM designated for you. So Diana, give us the lowdown on Michigan.
Sure. So we have had a STEM designated specialization in management science since this past January. It is 18 credits out of the 57 required to graduate with your MBA. And it is made up of really a lot of our very popular courses, whether it's our big data classes, artificial intelligence, analytics, evaluations. So quite a nice set of courses that would make up that STEM certification.
Great. And Doug, at Rutgers, what shape does it take?
So we just recognized this year our program as a STEM program, really understanding that that's what we've been for some time. Our four largest concentrations are supply chain management, finance, pharmaceutical industry management, and marketing. And in all of those, we have a reputation for offering a lot of quantitative courses. And so this is our first entering class that comes in knowing that we are a STEM MBA. Our first graduating class was in May, and we're looking forward to developing all the concentrations in such a way that students can pursue the STEM degree. It is the whole program in our case. And we do believe it's possible in any of our 10 concentrations to take enough STEM courses to qualify.
Great. And Kim at Miami, what does it look like?
So we have been offering STEM Masters for several years. Last year, 2019, was the first year that we've offered this opportunity to be able to earn a STEM MBA. This does build in with and pulls from specialized courses across 4 different areas. So the options that students would have is in accountancy, finance, business analytics, and also in sustainable business as well. So, and with the formatting wise, students are able to begin with the more specialized, the more STEM courses up front, and then advance into more of the management and the strategic courses through the MBA curriculum, the core.
Right. And then Steve, at Weatherhead, is it the full MBA that's STEM designated, or is it a piece of it?
We actually have both, and we've had STEM designations in our other master's programs, but in 2019, we launched the STEM MBA as an option beyond the traditional MBA with our concentration. So the STEM MBA program, the first year will look the same in the traditional MBA and the STEM, but then due to the nature of the courses that make up a good deal of the second year, by taking mostly STEM eligible electives, students can graduate and have the STEM MBA, but we have it in addition to our traditional program.
Right. Now, of course, STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and math. That's not really an MBA. So what are the advantages of a STEM designated program? And why do you think they've become so popular in the last 2 to 3 years? Diana?
John, I too am a poet. So I got my MBA 10 years ago from Michigan Ross, and I wish this set of courses existed back then. And in fact, I wish I would have taken more of these courses now, because this is something that even our admissions team says we want to become, more data literate, more tech focused, all of these things just to really keep up with where the world is headed. And when we take a look at the jobs that people are going to be going into in a few years, so if they start next fall and they graduate, 2023, we're bringing people into our programs and training them for jobs that essentially don't exist right now, in particular, some of the tech-enabled jobs that people are going to be looking to go into. So we have to be able to provide the foundations that students are going to be looking to. So obviously, this is a question that comes up a lot with our international students. Essentially, every time we're talking to international students, this has become table stakes, something that they want to know exists to be able to get the extension in their OPT time after school. So we're hearing a lot from international students, but of course, across the board, essentially all students are telling us, I want to be more tech enabled through my MBA. I want to be more data and analytically focused during my MBA. And the STEM is one way to do that in terms of the coursework that you would take.
Yeah, it's really the confluence of two different things that have occurred, right? As you pointed out, it's increased demand from corporate clients for these skills. We've seen in the last 10, 20 years a massive increase in the amount of data that companies can collect through the use of technology. And the difficulty that the companies are having is, how do you harness all that data? How do you wade through it all and make it useful for decision making? So that's one very big trend that is driving a lot of this. But the other big trend, of course, is we've been through a period where there's been a lot of anti-immigration rhetoric in our country, where there is greater uncertainty than ever before about obtaining an H-1B visa. And what STEM designated programs do for international students is give them another pathway to work in the United States once they graduate. So people who are from a STEM designated program essentially have 2 additional years of OPT, which is called optional practical training, so that they can be assured, if going into a STEM related job, that they can work in the United States for 3 full years without worry. Now, the other issue here is, what that means is you have 3 shots then instead of 1 in the H-1B lottery. And that becomes a very important aspect of this as well. Now, Kim, at Miami, do you see more international students interested in STEM designated programs than domestic, or not?
I would really reiterate, as Diana had mentioned, I think there is interest across the board, but certainly from our international students, that is a question that's coming about earlier on in the conversations, to know if perhaps that not only in terms of the curriculum, that more technical, more analytical curriculum is available, but that possibility of extending that visa as well. That is a big focus, but even from US students as well, we're certainly gaining interest.
Doug, have you seen a greater interest on the part of companies yet in STEM designated graduates? I mean, is there an actual impact in the workplace for job opportunities?
I believe there is. Now, we just graduated our first MBA students with the STEM designation in May, and some of them were able to take advantage of the extended OPT, although most already had their jobs lined up by the time we announced it.
Right.
I would say that our traditional ties are strong to the pharmaceutical industry, financial services, given our location. And we do see examples of those large multinational corporations in those industries being willing to sponsor. It's not just a matter of whether the student's willing to stay or what program the school offers, but the employer being willing to hire someone for that extended OPT. And even if that doesn't lead to a career for the rest of your life in the US, it can mean that you end up going on an overseas rotation for one of these companies at a much higher level because you've been able to stay at headquarters longer and really get to know the company ways.
Yeah, really good point. Now, I know, having looked at employment reports at different schools that have had STEM designated programs before, and I've talked to career management people about this, and there's no doubt that their employment statistics for international graduates have improved as a result of STEM programs, because you just find more companies willing to hire international graduates from MBA programs as a result. So I'm a poet, just like Diana. I majored in political science and English, and I'm not ashamed of it. But if your program's STEM designated, maybe I'm thinking, boy, is it going to be too quanty for me? Steve, what do you say?
Well, I have to look at your profile and application a little bit further to make a formal assessment.
Okay,
But
I got a 780 on a GMAT. Okay.
it is interesting, and just like with a traditional MBA, of course, elements of the program are going to be technical, analytical, quantitative. So that's always been the case with MBA, and again, even in STEM MBA, where you might even have more of a focus on that. But one of the things that what we look at when we're assessing candidates, and I think other schools do too, is that can each individual candidate who's considering this program thrive in it, and can the program add value to that candidate when they leave, depending on their personal and professional objectives. So there's different ways to assess that comfort level and proficiency with some of the quantitative ability and analytical ability. It might be the GMAT or GRE. It could be undergraduate coursework and performance and outcomes in the undergraduate work, or even in master's level or higher work prior to the MBA. It could be also in the current role and the professional experiences someone has had before they come into the program, and how they're demonstrating the skill set and the knowledge, analytical problem solving ability. So, or it could be any combination of those. So for us, there's different ways to have evidence show that the candidate could be able to thrive in the program. And again, we might have more backgrounds that seem to trend more in these types of programs in the STEM MBA. But again, having that a broader group of people coming in, we've seen that they can be highly successful, even in some of our very special master's programs, that an English major can do well in a finance program, and you don't have to have the finance background necessarily. So I think that might be something that potential students may take themselves out of the running of a possible program fit, when really the individuals need to connect directly with the program directors or the admissions staff to talk about that, because I think there's more access to this type of a program, STEM MBA, than some candidates might perceive.
Right. Now, Diana, you said as a poet, you wish you had more of the STEM kind of influenced and embedded education than you had. But, the MBA is the quintessential general management degree. Does a STEM designation in any way take away from that?
I really don't think it takes away from it at all. I mean, when we take a look at the candidates that are coming in, it's something that they want, right? So when they take a look at their MBA experience, they're saying, I want to be able to leave with the technical chops that are going to help me succeed in the next roles that I'm looking at. But I also want to become a more well-rounded person, a more well-rounded leader while I'm here at Michigan Ross. And I would actually tell candidates who are maybe listening to this thinking, let me put my application together to demonstrate, that I would have strength in the STEM portion of the MBA. Well, they might be missing really the key things that we're taking a look at, which are going to be your leadership potential and your ability to adapt and learn and take feedback and build and grow from it, right? To be able to navigate ambiguity, which nothing could be more prominent this year than ambiguity of the last 6 to 12 months. So, I think if a candidate came in and really just positioned their technical side, it probably wouldn't be as attractive to the most MBA programs than us understanding really the other side, the soft skills and the other things that you bring to the table.
Right. Now, Kim, in fact, do I have to sacrifice any soft skills at all if I go into a STEM designated program, or do I get the soft stuff along with the hard stuff?
A great question. And I absolutely agree. It's about that balance. And you would find with our curriculum that it is about developing the skills on both sides. So certainly the analytical, the quantitative skills, but the soft skills as well. So the ability to be able to lead teams, to manage, to work within organizations, within our program, of course, especially being here in our market in Miami, there is that focus also on international business, and that carries throughout our programs. So that idea of not only being able to connect and work with others, but across cultures too, being able to navigate through those areas of uncertainty too.
Right. And now, Doug, you mentioned pharmaceuticals and finance, and of course, Rutgers has a good reputation in supply chain management. All fields where good analytical skills are very much in need. What kind of companies and industries do you think are most interested in STEM graduates from MBA programs?
Well, I think there are two aspects to think about in terms of STEM. So one is the S&E. Having a STEM MBA program doesn't necessarily mean that more scientists and engineers are enrolling in business school, but it can mean that. And that's something that's been true at Rutgers for a long time, particularly because of the ties to the pharmaceutical industry. We get a lot of people who already have PhDs in science or master's degrees, right? What we give more in the program itself is the T and the M, learning about technology industries and product innovation, and also how to use applied math. So I would say that in some sense, any industry that's wanting informed decisions, data-driven decisions, is hiring STEM people because they can come from all sorts of backgrounds, but they also know the math to be able to run the data. Here we see increases in the healthcare sector in particular, and I would say in consumer products as well, that in terms of increases in demand.
Right. And I'm sure that includes consulting because a lot of analytical skills come to bear in a consulting assignment, right?
So for us, we have multiple experiential learning opportunities, including a consulting course, but our graduates tend to go into specialized consulting, such as supply chain consulting, maybe even specifically in logistics, not so much strategy consulting. That's not our niche.
So Steve, what's the difference? In other words, what have you had to add in terms of programming, or what have you had to emphasize to get STEM designation? So if I go into a STEM designated track or an MBA, what might I expect in terms of actual classroom experience?
Sure. Well, as I mentioned earlier, the first year of the STEM MBA is going to look similar to the traditional MBA program with some foundation, core courses. Two of the core courses in our MBA are STEM eligible to begin with. And then again, in that second year, when 7 of the 10 courses would be STEM eligible, which is more than a traditional MBA student would take, including open electives in a core strategy course. The STEM designated courses, they run the gamut as far as content and topical focus, but we've added quite a bit more in the area of artificial intelligence and blockchain, fintech, those types of things where we've really wanted that to be part of all of our programs, but specifically in the MBA. And that's an area that we're seeing a lot of application. And we just heard, increase in the healthcare space. We're, one of the healthcare hubs in the U.S., just down the street from the Cleveland Clinic and other great systems. So we're seeing a strong, tie to the healthcare system and how, healthcare professionals and decision makers in that space are using analysts and need people that have certain skills in that landscape, which, as we all know, is changing so rapidly. But I would say primarily, but not exclusively, in that area of of AI and related concepts, because that's something that is applicable to all industries, all sectors, and really is where things have been heading for a while, and we know is probably not going to subside anytime soon.
Right. Now, we just had an election in America. A lot of people paid a lot of attention to it all over the world. We've gone through a period of a lot of anti-immigration rhetoric from this current administration, and a lot more uncertainty over H-1B visas. With the new administration, does it make STEM designated MBA tracks and MBA degrees less important, or it doesn't really change? Diana?
I'm hopeful, John. I'm hopeful that there are going to be even more opportunities for our international students to take on these new roles. Whether the STEM designation will continue to be required or not. I mean, some of these things I think we have yet to see, but I'm hoping that there's going to be an openness to bringing this talent in and furthering our economy as a result of that. There's going to be opportunities for MBA students. There's going to be an opportunity for our economy to thrive. One of the things that we have done as business schools is, we try to mitigate against some of these fluctuations in the political uncertainty. So for example, Michigan Ross, and I'm sure several other schools did this, we've made the summer experience, typically called the internship, a requirement of graduation, right? So those months have to be a requirement of graduation. As a result, if there's been fluctuations in whether you have to be in class in person or virtual or otherwise that may have impeded the summer experience for our international students, we've now made it a requirement of graduation. As a result, it kind of mitigates some of what we were seeing 6+ months ago. But I very much am hoping that there is going to be a favorable, lean towards helping our international students find these employment opportunities and be eligible for them.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think we're going to have a much more welcoming climate and culture in the United States under a new administration for international students. And by the way, I know that during the worst of it, when you read headlines in your local press about the situation in America, it's very easy not to understand that in all colleges and universities, diversity is an important aspect of your education. And international students are embraced, they are welcomed, they are not segregated. At every university, usually it's a much more progressive culture, and everyone in the business school community really understands how important it is to have a very healthy representation of international students, to bring cultural diversity and insights into how international business is done in different countries. And that has never gone away. I think with the new administration, people will feel much more welcome here. Now, one thing that won't change, I will just tell people who are outside the United States, immigration policy in the United States, as it is in most countries, is a very challenging and complicated subject. Things don't change overnight. And that's why I also think STEM designation, even in a more welcoming environment, is going to be helpful to international students who want to spend some time in the United States working and understanding how business is practiced here, whether they stay forever and maybe get an H-1B visa or they don't. So that it's still going to be a really important part of a business education. And having that option just gives you a little more certainty, more confidence that you're going to be able to work in the United States for up to 3 years, if not more. So, we've been through a really tricky time with a pandemic. I know that at a lot of schools, what the pandemic has caused is a decline in the numbers of international students in MBA programs. That's more a function of test centers closing, student visas being unavailable because the embassies were closed for a long time, travel restrictions imposed by different countries, and then the uncertainty over how education would be delivered. Would it be a hybrid, online? How much would be in person, how much not? So I'm wondering, in terms of all of your incoming classes, what happened to your international enrollments? And I'm going to bear in mind that most of the people who are going to watch this are applicants. And what it means for an applicant is going to be very different than what it means for a current student. And that's because I'm hopeful, and so are all of us, I'm sure, that in the matriculation in the fall of next year, we won't have to worry about a pandemic. The economy will be in full recovery, and we'll be looking at an entirely different picture than we're looking at it now. But to the extent that you enrolled, your classes this fall, how did the pandemic impact your international enrollments, Kim?
Yeah, so we have, in terms of our MBA program, we've always had a very healthy mix of international candidates coming in. This year was certainly challenging, without a doubt. We had many international applicants that were already in the process and working with us when, of course, everything hit. So it was a matter of working with them to determine what options we had. And just as you mentioned, John, a lot of it had to do with any travel restrictions, visa processing, formatting. And so what we found is we fortunately really did not have much of a loss. So we had a slight decline in terms of the overall percentage, but that was in thanks part actually to what you're talking about, H-1B visas, to those who were here already, in fact, coming from undergrad STEM OPT, so students who had a good 3 years of professional work experience that were already here in the US, and it was a matter of more so a CVIS transfer. But then there were those that were in their home country that were looking to join the program but could not physically get here. And with that, it really took a lot of flexibility, a lot of planning internally, but we were very fortunate to have and actually have now some of those students who joined remotely, although our program was able to move forward with offering classes on campus in person. We also extended the flexibility for students who were unable to be here to join virtually. So they were able to stream in, live, or depending on their time zone, some were, tuning into recordings of their class sessions. And so they were able to still join this year's cohort, this intake. Some have since already squared away all the details with their visa. They've arrived here already, and then others will be arriving for the start of the January term. So that's one of the ways in which we were able to really work through and still retain that diversity within the class.
Yep. How about at Rutgers?
Well, our count was down a little bit in terms of international students because of the visa issues.
Sure.
Overall, we had similar diversity along multiple dimensions as in past years. Even a little higher percentage of women who enrolled this year compared to past. Now, for us, it's a matter of our undergraduate school, particularly in Newark, is so diverse, one of the most diverse in the country, that it's still a welcoming atmosphere for an international student who comes in from just about any country in the world to find folks who can speak their language, have had similar experiences, and so forth. But at the graduate level, we haven't been able to meet face-to-face for our classes this fall in New Jersey. And therefore, we've had some issues with just everyone feeling a part of things. Normally, we feel like we're a very welcoming place. We're located, a couple of subway stops from New York City. And the appeal of the cosmopolitan atmosphere and the nightlife and the culture and everything else usually gets students hanging out together pretty early on. And that hasn't happened as much this year. We've had to rely on the students who are more advanced in their use of social media and online communication than I am to help us to come up with the kind of events and networking that we can do online.
Right. Steve, how has the pandemic impacted international enrollments at Case Western?
Well, across our programs, the impact has varied. For some of our programs, which have been historically a higher percentage international, many of those students who were admitted and who were planning to come, like Kim said at Miami, decided to either defer start until spring 2021 or defer an entire year until fall 2021 in some of those programs. In the MBA program, overall, our enrollment actually was up in the 2020 entered class than the class that came in 2019. So our enrollment was higher. The percentage of international students relative to the class size was smaller. So we did see that impact. And we do also have some candidates, international candidates, who right now are participating remotely, with the group on the ground here in Cleveland. Some of it's live, synchronous, some of it's different, formats and the conveniences given the time zones. But we're obviously looking at the 2021 cycle and staying in communication with those folks who indicated sort of a delayed entry until January or next August. But we still had a variety of countries represented in the MBA program, and we're hoping that, as you pointed out just a few minutes ago, as we see that there'll be more opportunity, access, sort of a different climate change, and again, even visa acquisition processes that are smoother and just available next year. So we definitely saw an impact, different across program, including the MBA, and we're just hopeful as well as we look ahead to 2021.
Indeed. Now, the vast majority of the people in the audience are international applicants, of course, because STEM designated programs have a special appeal for them. So what I'd like to ask is, what kind of accommodations, what kind of support do you provide an international student who's coming to the United States, maybe for the first time ever in their lives, to make it easier, to make it more comfortable, to make it not such a burden? Diana?
Yeah, I mean, this is if ambiguity has been the nature of 2020, empathy has been the response, right? And what do we need to do to, be supporting our students during this time frame? What I'll say is even, prior to COVID, there's always going to be unique challenges for international students coming to a US school, right? And what that's going to look like and the complications with recruiting. There's a lot of opportunity. They just have different considerations that they, additional things they need to think about. So, we have been in touch with our international students very well over their onboarding experience into our hybrid environment. Most of our international students have been able to arrive in Ann Arbor. But importantly, we want to make sure that we have the right resources and professional staff in place to support them. So, for example, we have a fully dedicated career professional specific for our international students. She not only supports their career search, as do our other professional staff and students who support the career search process, but she teaches a course that specifically helps our international students navigate some of the complexities that they have that are unique to their situation. Again, whether COVID, presidencies or otherwise, this is something that's been ongoing. And in terms of the environment, we were talking a little bit about the elections earlier. I worry that people from the outside see a map that is just red and blue, right? In this kind of, maybe monolithic way of looking at the way that the environments are that they're coming into. And I look at a place like Ann Arbor and some of the other cities here represented on the call, and we have students from all over the world coming to study engineering and healthcare, medicine, law, what you name it. And so you already have a really pretty great community to be a part of in terms of where you're living and where you're studying. And then I think within sort of the bounds of the school, we put on events. We have one this Thursday called Food, Friends, and Culture, where our international students who actually were able to come this fall, and it is a sizable number, but fewer than normal years, are going to be sharing their experiences with our deferred students, with their current students, fellow students, to share a little bit more about their experience and again, build on some of that empathy that I think is so needed this year in particular.
So that'll be a big feast, right? I mean, all the students will cook up their favorite cultural dishes and bring them to campus.
We do different versions of it. So the Latin American students did one last month, and we had a few of them say, this is where I'm from. This is what it looks like. These are some of the, norms that we have from where I am. And of course, these events are virtual, right? From an accessibility perspective, we want to make sure that they're open. This particular event, though, it's going to be featuring international students from a few different locations. The school is going to be paying for lunch. I don't know if it's like through like Uber Eats or, some versions of being able to pick up lunch so that at least everybody can eat whatever they choose to remotely as we engage and try to connect and learn more.
Right. Now, Kim, I'm imagining that Miami draws heavily from Latin America for many international students. What kind of accommodations or support are you able to provide these students who come to school in the U.S.?
Absolutely. We have had, I mean, for many years, of course, strong representation from throughout Latin America, but we do also bring a number of students, a large population actually coming from Asia and Europe as well. So different areas certainly represented, and we do recognize that it is a transition for those individuals. There's a lot of challenges, acclimating to the new environment, getting to know their new city, not to mention the experience of, the education system and also the employment, the recruitment experience here as well. So I would say a lot of what we do have built in is, in the area of student services. There's events that happen very early and really the first few weeks of the new program, the new fall start, in which we have events to help them, just start to get more acclimated, get to know the campus, the environment, the resources that are available to them. And then there's a heavy emphasis with our ZIF Graduate Career Service Center, our dedicated department for graduate business career planning. They put together different resources. In fact, one that we've started working with, I want to say last year was the first year. It's actually a company that was started by one of our alumni, Inner Stride. So this is an individual who went through, years back, went through all of the, headache and frustration of the visa process to the employment to the, all of that. And he took what he learned and really said there has to be a better way. It has to be, less stressful to go through this. And so he's put together a lot of great resources. And now on his platform has really a database, a platform for companies, positions that are looking to hire international candidates. So I know we've been working closely with them and now my understanding is that there's a number of universities across the US that have started to work with them. But that's just one example. We also host recruitment events. Right now, of course, many of these, company connects and, networking and recruitment sessions are being held virtually.
Right.
But there are some that, in addition to the traditional recruitment type of fair, we have some that are really targeted to bring together companies that are very interested, very much looking to consider international candidates. So it's making sure that they have that exposure and the guidance to work through these challenges.
Yeah, I'm imagining too that when an international student comes here, there's a lot of just everyday stuff that's confounding. Like, how do you get a driver's license? And if I get my internship, what do I have to do to file my taxes? Or any number of things. How do I rent an apartment? I mean, Doug, do you provide any help and assistance and hand-holding with things like that?
We have a lot of official help, but I'll tell you the most helpful are the current students.
Yes, of course.
They tend to reach out. We have many of our students who volunteer to talk to applicants as part of the admissions process. And yes, they're talking about the great things about Rutgers Business School, but they're also picking names off the list that are people that they think they could relate to and help make a good decision. And so particularly in terms of housing, transportation, things like that, we have found that our incoming students tend to connect to our current students through social media and other ways and get good advice from them. We're part of one of the perhaps 5 largest universities in the country. Over 60,000 students at Rutgers, New Brunswick. And so we have a very large student service offices for international students, for veterans, for any other type of student who might have some particular concerns about transitioning to university life. And we do direct students that way. And we're very pleased to have people who rose up through the staff of the business school who are in some of those positions.
Right, exactly. And I'm sure the similar services are at Weatherhead. And I also imagine that, you can always have an alum from a different country who's already been through the experience connect with an applicant to kind of give them a little bit of sense of here's what I went through and here's what you can expect.
Absolutely. And you mentioned before, sometimes the things such as driver's license and figuring out where the nearest grocery store are, or just some of the things that some of us take for granted could be stressful for an incoming international student. So the Case Western Reserve University has a Center for International Affairs, and within it, a Department of International Student Services and Weatherhead School of Management has a dedicated staff from the Department of International Student Services who works with us exclusively in the business school with our business school students on some things that are related to the visa and policies and procedures and so forth. So we have that taken care of, but just the getting to know Cleveland, we put together a housing guide for students so they can start searching, where they're going to stay. We have vendors come to campus, in the very, very beginning of the year, anything from banks to cell phone providers to other, local establishments that students can connect with just to learn about setting up some basic things that are very important. We also have, in addition to a traditional orientation for all MBAs, we have a dedicated international student orientation talking about some very specific things that pertain to that group of students. So I think the key is that and I think that my peers would agree, is that having that philosophy of inclusion, of being welcome, and also just having a heightened sensitivity to some of the things that our international students are experiencing that we may at times take for granted, but could be top of mind and could cause quite a bit of confusion or even stress. So it's reducing that, it's getting settled, so they can focus on jumping into their course.
Mm-hmm.
And getting to meet the classmates and all the things that they're here for without some of the distractions that we've talked about that can be, again, somewhat challenging coming from another part of the world.
Sure. Now, do you look at international applicants, and in particular, those who want to go into a STEM designated track or concentration differently than you look at the general MBA applicant pool, Steve?
Well, I guess the short answer would be we look at all candidates' profile to determine the ability to thrive in the program and can we add value to the student's experience.
Mm-hmm.
So whether in doing that, whether it's a traditional MBA or STEM, again, we talked earlier about some of the ways that you can determine that. And sometimes, of course, you're going to look at coursework, background, performance in undergrad, graduate, and outcomes. But who they are as a person and a professional, we have that profile. We have a resume. Of course, we have that. But I think, and as Diana mentioned, earlier, just having a sense of who that person is, what they're hoping to achieve, and is this a program that aligns with that? And sometimes it doesn't. But we want to determine that fit, mutually. And some of that's based on metrics and data points, but sometimes it's based on other things, qualitative skills, communication skills, presence, maturity, poise, genuine interest in being excited about helping their classmates learn, someone who's going to kind of have that, how can we all grow through this experience approach? How can we help each other in this MBA program? So those things are very important in any program, STEM or otherwise. But sure, you're going to look at the application and certainly review that carefully. But looking at the person, and again, assuming there is some evidence that the skill set is there to achieve success in the coursework that's designated for those students, then if there's a broad background represented in the group, that's great. It's a more robust, I guess, class in the STEM MBA. So we do look at all candidates carefully, individually, and certainly consider all dimensions, again, whether international or from the US, STEM or traditional.
And Diane, if I'm applying to Ross and I know I want to do your STEM track, do I indicate that up front in my application materials or not?
We don't have any place in the application for you to express your interest in your STEM interest, but we do have a career goals essay, right? We're obviously taking a look at other attributes of fit. I was taking a look at where our international students from this last class that just graduated went, and something like 75% of them went into consulting or tech, right? So the top employers for international students were, Amazon, Microsoft, McKinsey, BCG, Google. I mean, it fairly consistent in terms of the same types of companies and roles that our students broadly speaking are interested in. And of our international students, about 70 or 80% ended up staying in the US after school. So this was after they just graduated now in 2020. And so, we know what international students largely are looking for, or the reasons that they're pursuing the MBA. So we're still looking at those same attributes of fit and potential and leadership ability, some of those things that I mentioned earlier, in the same way that we would, whether they're STEM interested or otherwise.
Right. Kim, I assume it's the same at Miami?
It is. It's very much about having that conversation. So getting to know our applicants early on and having discussions as far as what their goals, what they want to gain from the program. With our program, because it is a little bit of a flip, if you will, because they would start first into the more STEM curriculum. That's definitely a conversation that we would have up front. And so it is something that would be reflected within the application. But again, it has to go back to that overall fit. We take a very holistic approach, as I'm sure, each of my peers here in terms of their committee and their review process. There's a lot of different elements that come into play in determining that fit and whether or not it's the right curriculum, the right program to help them accomplish their goals.
Right. Now, I know a lot of MBAs do dual degree programs. I can't even imagine it. But a good percentage of MBAs not only want the MBA, but they want another degree. So, and I'm sure all of your schools offer those opportunities, but I wonder if in fact a dual degree could be a STEM degree with the traditional MBA, no STEM designation. Is that true in all of your cases?
I'm not sure if I would say it quite that way, because some schools have programs that are explicitly STEM because you get a one-year master's in a STEM field and then additional coursework for the MBA. And at Rutgers, we don't have dual degree programs within the business school. Our dual degree programs are an MBA with an MD or
Right.
a degree in
Or
dentistry,
engineering, computer
health.
science, math.
Exactly, exactly. And so that's more the nature of what we offer here.
Right. And at Michigan, I think you do have a number of dual degrees in the business school itself, right?
Well, we've got over 20 different dual degrees that you can opt into, whether it's policy or law, healthcare, public health and others. And so there are students who are taking a look at both dual degree, both programs. And if for example, the School for Environment and Sustainability or the School of Information are STEM certified, maybe this gets a little too in the weeds, but the STEM certifications are based on specific things. So the way that the School of Environment is STEM certified is a little different than the way the business school is STEM certified. And as a result, the nature of the jobs that would qualify for STEM certification are different from the School of Environment, let's say, than from the business school. There's probably some overlap in there. I think one thing that's confusing for applicants is that it's not companies that are the company doesn't sponsor every possible role. The company may have roles within it that are STEM certified, and they may have roles that they're recruiting MBAs for that are not STEM certified, right? So there's a lot of nuance, which is, I think, why when we talk about the support structures that our schools offer, that's critical, because there are going to be some unique things that international students are going to need to be aware of as they're reviewing. Good news is we're seeing good outcomes, right? We are still seeing really great success with our international students. There's just unique things that they need to consider as they're reviewing their career opportunities.
Right. Okay, now, we are still in a pandemic. In the United States, cases are surging, as they are in many parts of the world. What I love to do in a more normal time is to go to Ann Arbor, go to Miami, go to New Brunswick, go to Cleveland, and go to a bar with, a handful of students. And the question I will inevitably ask them, besides, okay, what is it really like? I'll ask, what are the 3 things you'll take away from the program and the school that will stay with you, that really resonated, that made a difference to you in your life? Kim, what would your students tell me?
Yeah, I think, although it can be unique from one student to the next, the hands-on experience that they gain in the program, the support that's provided by our career services, the ZIF Graduate Career Service team, and then the community overall, the support, from academic advisors, their professors. That time and again is one that I think many students are so impressed and also surprised by as they get into the curriculum, their courses. They realize just truly how accessible their faculty are, and how supportive, and they're incredible to pull from their own experience, their research. Many of them still serve in a consulting capacity across different industries. So it's exciting to experience, but I think that those would be the top three, especially as we talk about the STEM curriculum across a number of these programs. So you're able to gain very hands-on technical, we work with DERPA, with the Deloitte Institute on research projects and data analytics for our students. We have our student managed investment fund. So it's experiences like that that really resonate and that really carry with them throughout.
Great. And what about in Cleveland, Steve? What are the three things that people who graduate from Weatherhead really remember for a long time that matter to them?
And I would say because we, compared to some schools that might be larger programs, we're, a reasonably smaller program, more intimate in terms of numbers and size, but that, translates across our programs with STEM MBA, specialized masters, traditional MBA, having a high degree of access to, and then responsiveness from faculty and staff for sure. And that's really, really important. I'd also say the one-to-one alumni mentoring that we establish and have in place for our students during the program and even after the program. And that also coincides with coaching. We have professional coaching that's part of the first year as well. So personalization, would be the second as far as the student experience. And then just in general, the development of some of the softer skills, the true leadership development that we've heard earlier in the conversation, but it is an art that can be taught and learned, and understanding emotional intelligence and what it means to be a self-aware person who can develop others as you develop yourself. So just that sense of heightened self-awareness, leadership development, and part of that is peer-to-peer, coaching. So that camaraderie, I think, that should exist in any MBA program and any B school certainly exists here. And I think they appreciate that it's, the cost of living is not too bad either here in Cleveland. But again, it's about the people, the access, the personalization, and developing your own self-awareness.
And the one-on-one mentoring, what approach do you take with that? Is that with executives, alums, second years? How do you shape?
Both. We have the mentoring exists, peer-to-peer with, incoming student and second year students. So there's that variation. And then with each student has, as an alum that we, establish more formally on an ongoing basis, again, based on interest and overlap, maybe desired industry, and even just connection, personal, how the connection can be made. And then we also have coaching. We have coaches, professional coaches who are actually from our organizational behavior program, and they work with our MBA students. So there's just a lot of one-to-one sort of approach throughout the program.
So if I'm interested in healthcare, you're going to hook me up with a mentor from Cleveland Clinic?
Could be from the clinic. There's a few other great health systems in Cleveland, but we do have very strong relationships, certainly at the clinic, and more formal, partnerships with that institution, and again, any others in the area. So, absolutely.
All right. So Doug, the three big takeaways for an MBA graduate from Rutgers.
I've only been at this since January. I've been faculty in MBA programs for 20 years at good schools, but I have limited experience with what the students would actually say in a bar. But my impression would be, first of all, I think one of the three things that would stand out would be an individual person. For most of them, it would be a certain faculty member, and that would be different across their concentration. But a lot of times I hear about how important it was, the influence that one faculty member in their field had. And oftentimes it's a professor of practice, someone who's teaching after many years in industry, And if it's not, then actually it might be one of our career services officers because they're very influential and helpful as well. After that, I would say the energy of living where we are. New Jersey is the most densely populated state in the United States. We are a state where you can be in the city, you can live in a high rise, you can get right over to New York City. Not everybody loves Broadway shows as much as me, but there's something for you. But at the same time, you're an hour from a lake or a shore or an organic farm, right? So there's just a lot of movement. People feel like they want to take advantage of everything there. And then I guess I would say the diversity. We don't think of ourselves as a competitive program. We want to be competitive, for students to be competitive on the job market. We want to be competitive with other schools, but within the school, we're not competitive. We welcome you. We want you to succeed. And I think for a lot of students in their mid-20s, this is the first time they've had this close of a relationship with someone who has had such a different life experience than they have. And so while everybody's here for their career goals, I do think that one of the big three hallmarks would be just the people that they got to know among their peers.
Yeah, I'm sure that's really true. And Diana, I know number one, it's got to be MAP.
Number one is MAP. That would probably be the first thing they tell you about is the last 7 weeks of your first year, you're going to be on a consulting like engagement full-time. Top companies this past year were Google, Amazon, Microsoft, Tata, all these big names around the globe. And so that really allows them a second internship, essentially 7 full weeks for a MAP project. And so as a result, we have about 90% of career switchers. But one of the other things that our students talk a lot about, I did a venture capital.
Wait, MAP stands for
Multidisciplinary Action Project.
What?
Yep. MAP, multidisciplinary.
I would say, every MBA program has experiential learning, but very few literally break the academic calendar so that for 7 weeks you're doing nothing except that consulting assignment. That is rare and very unusual. Okay.
So I was doing a venture capital and private equity webinar last night. And it's a very network driven space that people end up going into. And one of the student panelists essentially said during orientation week, I met an alum, told her what my interests were. And by the end of the week, she had put me in touch with 14 different alums to reach out to. So I think the strength and then the engagement of the alumni network and the passion that our alums have to support our students is also really notable, something they'd share a beer with you about.
Great. Well, listen, it's been a true joy and a pleasure to be with you over this last hour. I've learned a ton. I'm sure everyone in their audience has, and everyone who views this later on will certainly gain a lot of expertise into the benefits of a STEM designated track or education, what it can do for you, why it's in such demand, and why it's become so popular. So Diana, Kim, Doug, and Steve, thank you so much for joining us. We really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. And this is John Byrne with Poets and Quants. Thanks for watching.